So at this time, I'd like to welcome our keynote speaker, Hamad Chowdhury, Vice President of Innovation and Construction Technology at Ellis Don. Hamad's experience with technology, it's immense. In addition to being a 40 under 40 in Canadian construction alumni, he was part of the class of 2022. He has more than a decade of experience in the construction and architecture industry. At Ellis Don, he leads several teams that drive advances in the business by matching projects with cutting-edge digital solutions. He also spearheads Ellis Don's Contech Accelerator and pilot programs and is a board member at Building Transformations. Passionate and innovative, Hamad is driven by a relentless curiosity and a commitment to transforming Canada's construction landscape through the use of technology. Hamad, I'm looking forward to hearing some of the digital changes that you've experienced in your history in the industry and what's exciting you about technology and construction as we look ahead in the industry. So please take it away, Hamad.
Thank you, Adam, and I'm excited to be here. This is a topic that I really enjoy. So we're going to give you an overview of the state of construction technology. But before we get into it, I'm here representing Ellis Don, so I have the honor of doing that. Ellis Don is a great Canadian construction services business. They can finance, design, construct, equip, operate, and manage anything that can be built. Some remarkable projects coast to coast. And I sit on our digital and data engineering team, which is Ellis Don's technology division, responsible for keeping everything operational when it comes to technology, and of course, driving innovation. The team also, develops software in-house, as well as working with external startups and running our accelerator program. And before we get, I want to reflect on this quote from Malcolm Forbes: "The best vision is insight." And really, if we unpack it, I think what you can understand is that having a clear vision is important, but really having insight is a lot more powerful. You're looking at the deeper layers, the meaning of what you're perceiving. And if you do have this insight, it can lead to, more effective decisions, actions, and outcomes, because you're essentially grounded in a profound comprehension of the matter at hand. And that's why I think it's important. We need to understand what happened that led us to this point with construction technology. And we're going to have to go back in time about 250 years or so, the first wave in the Industrial Revolution, when the cotton mill in Britain came up. That led to what you could argue is one of the first of the 6 waves. The second one was when railways came in and proliferated urban growth across society. And then, of course, that was followed by Henry Ford, the Model T, and the revolution in manufacturing. It's really important because this unlocked productivity within society that we had not seen before. And as time moved forward, we witnessed the aviation industry take off. This allowed for people, ideas, and obviously economic integration across the world, really speeding up economic development in a lot of economies. And then the one that we've all kind of lived through over the past, 20, 30 years, the digital era, this has really flipped things on its head for industries like news, media, even finance. There's altogether new segments of the economy that never existed with these digital companies that now represent huge opportunity and growth. And we're actually living through a paradigm shift in the latest one. You could argue the 6th wave is among us now, with artificial intelligence, machine learning, computer vision, connected devices, IoT, of course, the clean tech revolution, robotics and drones. All of these things now are posing a new wave of innovation that could unlock economic growth in a way that we've seen with the past waves. And if we focus a little bit closer to construction and look at some of the trends there, each decade over the past several decades has had some really key innovations. So in the 60s, hydraulic equipment was one of the biggest things that kind of helped the segment kind of stay innovative and grow. By the 70s, it was our material advancements and petrochemicals, silicon, flex duct, conduits, all those kind of things that we rely so heavily on today. In the 80s is when AutoCAD and the personal computer and the PC started to really take place. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit as well. In the 90s is about technology coming in place. We saw robotic total stations, the predecessor to Revit, and all those kind of tech companies start to take place. But in the 2000s is where we saw a lot of digital innovation. So Lightwork Design, which got acquired by Autodesk as Navisworks, same thing with Revit, Procore, Aconex. All these tools were coming into the market and growing as startups, and obviously being acquired by some of the larger companies like Autodesk. And then in the 2010s, that's when software really started to blow up. So software as a service, or SaaS, you saw things like FieldWire, PlanGrid, Procore, wide use of BIM across major players in the industry, and consumer electronics making their way in. And that brings us to kind of the post-COVID era, or 2020s, the era where we're seeing a lot of venture capital activity, investment opportunities within that confluence that we're seeing broadly across society, our economy, and obviously demographics and these tech shifts that we're talking about. Really, to understand the impact that technology has and the opportunity, you got to think about construction overall. So construction is one of the largest pieces of the world's economy, 13% of the world's GDP. About 7% of the people that can work are within the construction services industry as well. And by the end of next year, we're looking at $14 trillion to be spent on construction, whether that's buildings, infrastructure, industrial services around that whole piece of construction. And as that's happening, projects are getting larger and larger and bigger. So mega projects, we're getting more and more instances of those across the world. But one key issue that keeps coming up, and again, this is maybe a little bit of an older chart here, but it remains the same, is majority of projects are late or over budget or both. And this is also before COVID, but since COVID, everybody, I think, has a pretty good awareness of the supply chain crunch we've been facing. Another key thing, which you'll notice, even though construction is one of the largest pieces of the global economy, the digital maturity when it comes to other pieces of the economy puts construction as kind of a laggard. But it's not because people aren't trying or there's not new technology. It's actually pretty complicated, and we'll try and peel some of those at a high level so people have an understanding. So the first thing about industry challenges, there's hundreds of factors that are driving change. But the three main conversation pieces that you'll hear quite frequently are going to be projects are becoming more and more complex. We have less skilled labor to be able to hire and bring in, and schedules are being compressed. So on top of the supply chain issues, we need to get things built quicker and faster. But one issue we face overall in the construction kind of industry at large is that we don't see the same kind of returns when it comes to productivity that you would get in the overall economy or in manufacturing. And manufacturing is a really, really interesting place for us to look, comparing it to construction. They have full 3D based processes designed for manufacturing and assembly. This lets them look at projects that are far more complex, get a lot more design up front. So you could argue they're better designed. Therefore, you can spend more time on the quality, get things out to the market, hopefully quicker, and create a more economic product. And because of that, you also see that the manufacturing industry has kind of a labor efficiency that's significantly higher. So every worker that you add in manufacturing, you're going to see a lot higher output of whatever your business is doing compared to construction in general. And also the other thing about manufacturing is it gives you a controlled environment so you can kind of really repeat and build on these predictable outcomes. And when you think about manufacturing, one of the economies in the world that's renowned is Germany for their quality, precision, technical excellence. And so I love this ad for Modi, progress through technology. That's one of their mottos. And that's funny, you see kind of one of their cars, 30-year anniversary of their Quattro drivetrain, driving up a ski jump. But Precision is other places as well. So Carl Zeiss makes some of the best lenses for cameras and equipment that you can get in the world. Bosch makes some of the best equipment, including, dishwashers, as funny as that may sound. And then Lamy makes some of the best pens and pencils in the world. And this is Germany. A few examples. There's a ton of other examples of their high quality precision manufacturing at scale. But even their society is not immune to being able to get construction to match up to manufacturing. They can't do it. There's something more inherent in the way that we build. Okay. So that's an example from the Berlin airport, which was billions of dollars over budget and years behind. And if you think about technology, a lot of people will think about Apple. They make phones, iPads, laptops, thousands of those. So you would think they'd be able to bring that same manufacturing prowess into construction. And for their headquarter, over $2 billion over budget, a couple of years over schedule as well. Looking at another example for manufacturing that really can show how much they can innovate in such a short period of time is looking at SpaceX. In 2008, the Raptor 1 engine was a concept, an ideation. In 2024, the third generation Raptor 3 is here. So in that short period of time, they've been able to not only produce a lot of these engines, they've been able to iterate on generations and create improvements that are remarkable. But we don't have that luxury. Every single building is a prototype. We do have different contract types to try and help move the risk, try and get people aligned. We also have different project types. So every time you have a new team, a new client, a new group of subcontractors and trade partners and design partners, and the people behind them and the supply chain. And so you don't get that ability that you do in manufacturing. Another thing about the barriers that you see in construction is we need to upskill people. We need to provide education, and it's expensive. Who's going to be providing that? A lot of the firms that you look at, there's over 800,000 firms across North America that are within construction focused business as a subcontractor, general contractor, or whatnot. It's hard for them to have leadership and buy-in when you're project to project reliance. Not all of them have that ability. And then you throw in the regulatory and authorities having jurisdiction, compliance issues. A lot of times there's a big risk. I know this pen and paper or old school methodology meets all the criteria in case something happens, but the new technology may not be proven and there's no methods to bring that in either. And of course, you have traditional culture and resistance to change, preference for those manual processes, as I just talked about. The fragmentation in our industry compared to others is significantly higher, not only because of the risk profile, but also because the digital tools we use from, finance all the way to operation generally are not connected whatsoever. And again, the cost of doing, R&D, testing out new tools and technologies is really hard when you have a cash flow driven industry, don't have that investment. On average, our industry is, less than a third of others of those other digital markets that we were comparing to earlier. But it's not all kind of bad. We do have this huge opportunity right now because we have a massive demographic shift happening. So the people with 20, 30 years of experience, building and getting projects going, as they retire, we're not replacing them with as skilled individuals in that realm. But these individuals that are coming up are very, very skilled when it comes to technology. And that is kind of where the balance and the opportunity lies for Canada at large, is if we can bridge that gap and help the industry that way. The other thing to point out is our industry has been innovative, even though we may not rank it as high, given the complexity of what we're dealing with. It's remarkable to see things like BIM, VDC, sensors, IoT, 3D printing, AR, VR, drones, and robotics, all kind of within the past 20 years become more and more prevalent. And the other thing too is there's been a lot of innovation when you think about prefab modular, using renewables, the focus towards sustainability and new materials as well. And now really shifting gears, I want to focus on another kind of quote to reflect on. This is from Jeff Smith, who was the previous CEO and currently the executive chair of the board Our software doesn't need to define the future, but it does need to agree with it. And digitizing 1985 isn't going to cut it. So now I want to talk about a few improvements and leaps and bounds that we've seen within our industry. What you see on the left is a light box. That's how we would compare drawings and do trade coordination and clash coordination originally. And then on the right, what you're seeing is a photo of a team looking at a model with all the multidiscipline trades and looking at clashes. So we have brought in new technology and methods to do that, and it's shifted. But also the process behind it shifted now. We have a whole new cohort of VDC folks that are kind of helping drive that process, where before is traditionally just your foreman and superintendent driving that process. Another cool and simple example is looking at markups. Markups are also something that rely on the drawings in the field. Sometimes you can lose them and it's hard to keep. But with the digital tools, whether you're on your phone, on the desktop, it's easy to do them. We can keep record and you don't need to worry about losing access. A foundational shift that we've witnessed, and this hits a lot of things, and we're not going to have time to get too deep into this, but if you look at drafting originally with pen and paper, every line that you would make, you would think very deeply about. Because if I rip that sheet of paper that I was drafting on, I would have to redo the entire sheet. But when AutoCAD came out, it made the cost of a line infinitely cheaper, right? So now you can draw so much more. And that shifted the way that maybe people were interacting and our business was across architecture, engineering, and construction shifting as well. But we didn't change the way that we actually bill. And then as we were adopting AutoCAD over 12 years, BIM started to come up. And now we've made that shift to BIM primarily. We also have not shifted the business models. And so when I was coming into the construction industry, some of the folks that I learned from, they used to talk a lot about the master builder concept and how that now has completely shifted away. But if you look at CAD, if you look at BIM and you compare that to drafting, there's also been a shift away from how we're doing production, and the thought that used to go into it has become a lot different. And a really good example of why the paradigm has not shifted properly, or we're not looking at this through the lens of how we should be procuring and running these businesses, is even though most firms are using building information modeling in BIM, you're getting these cool 3D models that have a lot of information. You can use them for everything from logistics, scheduling, to fabrication and quantities. What we're focused on in the industry is really contracts that are what govern contract documents like these drawings. So we take all that information generally, squish it down, and get it out in 2D format. And so there is a need, if you think about it, for us to compete on the global stage and look at what's happening. And if we look at Europe, the government has stepped in and brought in some digital mandates. The UK is even exporting some of their frameworks through ISO 19650. In the Middle East, you see UAE mandating digital building permits through the use of BIM. The US is a completely different market. They don't have any federal mandates, but they have been pioneers in not just developing startups, but also a lot of the construction technology that you see around the world. And they are starting to have that conversation about bringing in certain government requirements. Canada now, all of the large players use technology like BIM, but there's still a huge gap for us. We're actually not maybe at the level we could be competing at when you look at the US and Europe with these tools and technologies. And as all of that's happening really quickly, we'll wrap up with venture capital. So normally venture capital, you think about startups like Uber and Airbnb and whatnot. And now a lot of these folks are looking at construction technology because of what we've just talked about. They like disruptive technology. They see a gap with how many people are coming in, so labor shortage, more spending on infrastructure construction. They know the benefits and they're looking for returns. So really, how is the industry responding? What have they done? If you look at Elliston, we've developed a lot of stuff in-house now, a lot of effort from our data infrastructure, BIM, VDC, software development. We've also launched our construction technology ecosystem. So we do have a great set of pilot program startups that we work with. We also have an accelerator where we do a call to action, and we've received 250 plus applications over the past 2 years. And then we're looking to build out this ecosystem with partnerships. If you look at the industry at large as well, you look at companies like PCL and their partnership with Latium, you look at DPR and their company vConstruct, Qt and their software Innate, Barton Mallow and their one of their companies called Flypaper Technologies. This is a trend that's going to continue to build and happen. And the reason really driving it is you have infinite ability to impact your project up front. But as time passes, you can't really make an impact without spending a lot of money. And so normally we have all of our design information and decisions and constructability conversations happening as we're building pretty much. And where we need to have it similar to manufacturing is way, way earlier. The best way to summarize it is reflecting on a quote from Frank Lloyd Wright. You can use an eraser on the drafting table or a sledgehammer on the construction site. And that's kind of, how the industry's been responding as well. But now let's look at how these technologies are improving workflows actually within our industry right now. And the first thing I want to bring up is, if everybody can type in the chat, what is it that you see? The reason why we do this exercise is to explain that no two people see things the same way. And technology can help bridge that gap. And so what you're seeing is a cow. So now that you've seen that, if we go back, I think it's a lot easier for you to pick that up. But now imagine if you're actually on a construction site and you're looking at progress that's happening on the project, concrete, it could be, curtain wall, any scope of work, and reporting it back. Or you're looking at documents, drawings, and interpreting what they say, the risk that lies within them. That is really, really where the biggest benefit is, through visual communication, getting everyone on the same page. And a great example of that is a phenomenon that's happening right now is convergence of reality capture. So before, your normal time-lapse camera, your drone, your laser scanner, 360 photo, they wouldn't really be overlapping. They're kind of separate technologies and tools. But now the way that the industry is moving with laser scanning and that whole scan to BIM process, we're seeing a convergence. So on your screen, this is just an example of a project, a stadium, which has been fully scanned. And that's roughly anywhere from 2 to 5 millimeter accuracy that's tied in georeferenced on this massive project, which then produces on our end this 3D model that now the team can use to do a renovation or an upgrade or all that kind of stuff. At the same time, doing 360 photos, which allows you to capture any state of time in the project that you're walking around with this simple camera all around you, as opposed to taking 20 photos, has now become very, very inexpensive and affordable. You can throw in your model, do comparisons. And now with artificial intelligence, tools like BuildDots are letting us not only do the capture and overlay the model, bring in our schedule and as-built information, and let the AI do a comparison through computer vision, which is now aligning that photo with that model and then comparing the two pieces so that you can see where reality has certain scopes of work, installation progress, compared to maybe what was planned and supposed to be there based on the model. And so it is quite remarkable now that you can see things like this example here. You see the missing pipe on the top right, and it takes a little bit of a jog instead of being a full straight run. There's also some missing segments or in progress installation, and the algorithm, the computer vision, the dashboard, everything can now tell you, hey, are things on schedule? Are they behind schedule? And this is remarkable, really think about it, because before maybe we'd have to go scan, you'd get drawings from your sub-trades and superintendents, you'd look at the photos, you'd create a report, and now you're getting a dashboard that's telling you what's complete, what's on schedule, even predicting how many days it's going to take you to complete that job. And that's not it. If you think about facility management, when you hand over a project, typically you'd be providing loads and loads of binders and drawings. You'd come back and you'd find a room with a chaos set of drawings, maybe a lot of markups. And now with tools like Cubics, we can take photos, add annotations, comments, add our model, and hand that over instead. Another big use is drones. When you look at the photos that we can take with drones, they're getting higher and higher quality with more and more survey grade information. Inputting that with GIS technology, this example is with AI clearing. You can now see if things are installed per schedule, how much quantity was installed, is it within the right area in terms of installation tolerances. And quickly, we'll talk about fixed position cameras as well. So what was just a still picture is now a bunch of analytics thanks to computer vision. You can see historical weather, activity on site. You can start to look at computer vision as tagging a lot of these elements. So as you get more and more photos and more kind of models, you can pull out infinitely more information. An example is if you look at that model, we're just overlaying it so you can see what's happening. But the level of analytics that we can pull on the bottom right is whenever a dumpster is full on site, now you can get an alert, dumpster full, let's get that empty. And I want to kind of switch gears really quickly as we wrap up to think about the disconnect that we have between what's happening on site and what we think. You have labor shortages, compressed schedules, all this kind of stuff, and we're trying to maintain a workflow. So it's not just about AI and kind of the cutting edge tools. A lot of it is about digitizing the process that exists in a way that makes sense, like Jeff's quote was saying, based on the technology available today. So delivery and logistics can become platforms that you can access on a mobile device and digitize entirely instead of using whiteboards. Same thing when you look at scheduling and planning. You can take that off the whiteboard and bring that into a digital environment and start to do a lot more digital collaboration, involve more people, and of course, keep that historically. You can get people into virtual environments to do design reviews and mock-ups. Our team across Canada has been doing a lot of this work and it's making an impact. But getting technology to the field is really, really important. And we haven't seen that amount of technology until recently coming in. So SiteLink can bring your model in, let you kind of really look at what you're trying to install and coordinate. Things like crew scope allow our teams to bring in incentivization to help the actual production, the hammers and the nails, the people that are building get tied back to the bigger plan. Even things that people don't think about as too advanced, like tower cranes, now are filled with these devices from Versatile with IoT sensors and whatnot. So you can see kind of how you're using your crane compared to your scheduled activity, get a fully detailed understanding of historical activity as well, so that you can build up your knowledge of how long does it take you to, for example, set up formwork and do a pour on columns on a typical project sequence. Really, a lot of the key comes down to document and contract reviews, though. That's still the bread and butter of what we do. Even though it's a relationship-based business, we do need to know our risk. And tools like Provision, which are using large language models to go through, comb these things, and answer questions or checklists that you may typically look through, is another powerful example of that technology available today. To wrap it up, we're going to talk about construction robotics. It's probably one of the most interesting pieces of the industry that a lot of people are interested because they like seeing robots moving on site. We are seeing progress, but there's so much more opportunity here. This is an example from Canvas Robotics. This is a drywall robot that can paint, tape, sand, and get a super high level of finish. And so we are seeing a lot of this cutting edge technology making its way, but we do have a lot of progress to kind of see still forward. So I want to thank everyone for their time. If you want to connect, happy to do so on LinkedIn. With that, over to you, Adam.
Awesome. Thanks, Hamad. That's unbelievable amount of information from you. Again, I don't know if you're up for a quick question. I know we had one here. If I could put you on the spot for it. There's a mention about the 31% of Canada leveraging BIM. What are the keys to faster uptake, or where do you think that's going to go over the next decade? Are we going to see that really rise? Or is the construction market, is BIM very much for the ICI and infrastructure segments, and that's why that number is a little bit lower?
Yeah, I think really quickly the number is lower because if you look at the industry, there's a lot of smaller subcontractors, trades across Canada and projects that may not be mega in scale, and also design firms. So that's part of the reason why, in terms of getting that uplift, we've left it to the market and we've gotten to a pretty good state, arguably. But if other jurisdictions are using sort of metrics from the government policy to help kind of create a boost, I think that's what we need to do in Canada. Otherwise, we're probably going to remain at a consistent kind of low growth within that range.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate those insights. And, I think looking at some of the things you discussed there, the laser scanning technology, I'm a huge fan of it. I've seen that go from kind of almost a dot matrix style visual that you would get to photorealistic now. It's amazing technology. I think we're definitely in the midst of a shift, and I think you said something in the realm of $14 trillion worth of opportunities out there. And I think that's going to be available to the companies that manage to ride this sixth wave, figuring out the new technologies, materials, and processes. Some of which we're going to be talking about in our upcoming panel discussion, I'm sure. So I really thank you for taking the time to join us today and share your insights. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the reality is this kind of knowledge sharing. That's the reason why we started this symposium. The 40 under 40 alumni that we have, we're going to be adding to our alumni list very shortly. We'll have the 2024 class being announced in our September edition. So please be there for or look for that when it comes out. Probably in about 3 weeks or so, maybe plus or minus a few days there. And realistically, our 40 under 40 alumni are some of the people who are really leading the charge and evolving our sector.